Hey, what's up you guys? Today I have a 2023 Subaru Crosstrek Sport that has 2.5 liter boxer engine with 182 horsepower and 176 pound-feet of torque. And this is a dynamic drive. That means I'm gonna drive it on the city streets, highway and canyon roads, and I'm gonna tell you how does it feel to drive. And at the end, I'm gonna give it a feel score. So what is the reason I got the Subaru as the first car? Well, me and my wife are looking to add a second car, a crossover, and we don't know, maybe a regular crossover, maybe a luxury crossover, maybe an SUV. So that's actually the reason we started this channel, because I say you need to drive a car for 50 to 100 miles before you consider buying it, and on these three terrains, city, highway and canyon roads, before you actually can decide if you like the car or not. And the reason I brought Subaru is because Subaru has, as you know, 67.8% of loyal customers who basically go and buy another Subaru. And I wanted to see how does it actually drive? How does it feel to drive Subaru? And if this is something I would consider buying. All right, first is initial look and feel. And let's quickly talk about how does Subaru look from the outside. I'm personally not a big fan of how Subarus look, but I guess it looks okay, looks pretty in line with what all Subarus look like, and they kind of keep it simple, sporty looking. I do like the sport trim on this Crosstrek. I like these black accents, black wheels. In fact, what is my favorite part of the Subaru is the side profile. I like this shape. It does look like a, like a smaller crossover, but actually it's much bigger than what it looks. So I do like that. And the rear of the car also looks fairly nice. The tail lights, all these rubber things here, plastic actually, so it looks good from the rear as well. Now let's do a quick door sound check, see what this is like. The door feels kind of heavy, actually heavier than some of the competitors, and this kind of gives you that feeling that this car is, a safe car, so I like it. All right, let's get into the inside. Alright, and now I'm inside the Subaru Crosstrek, and the first thing I can say is that I'm not fairly impressed with the materials. They look okay, but when you start touching things, you can see they're easily, they move. They don't rattle as yet. This car has like it has a 20,000, close to 20,000 miles, so it's kind of okay, but I feel like it's gonna rattle later on. So I don't know if Subaru owners, you can comment, let me know your feedback. This is also hard plastic. What I don't like is that all these panels, when you press them a little bit, they easily move. These things will rattle too. So as it looks nice, all this stitching, I like the sport trim, all these gold accents, the gold stitching, even the dials throughout this, and even the seat Crosstrek are in gold color, the stitching. So all this looks cool. I'm not a fan of this interior, but I get the point why they're making it like this. They want to keep it simple because this car serves its specific purpose, and part of it is off-roading, which it does fantastically well. So this is all I want to bring up about the interior, that to me it looks a little cheap. On the pictures, when you configure this car online, you don't expect this quality. You expect it to be nicer, at least on par with Toyotas and Hondas. And I think Hondas and Toyotas feel much nicer. And if I bring those cars on the channel, we're going to talk about that. So now let's go ahead and drive it. Driving Subaru Crosstrek 2023 in the city. The first thing I want to quickly do is acceleration. And this car has 182 horsepower, right, and 176 pound-feet of torque. It does feel underpowered, of course. I wish it had more power, and also we're dealing here with CVT transmission that creates a lot of noise. It's kind of okay, let's go, yeah, I'm going. So transmission is basically has a lot of that high-pitch revving. It's trying to do its best to rev up this boxer engine. It's alright for what it is, but I wish it had more power, maybe somewhere around 220 horsepower. Then it would have felt nicer. So one thing you also notice, this cabin is not that well insulated, so you hear a lot of revving in the cabin. And we'll talk more about acceleration. The next thing I want to talk about suspension. Now I'm specifically driving on the beat up roads here in on Tampa Avenue in San Fernando Valley, Southern California. And one thing I want to say now, I'm really, you know, driving on these, you know, little bumps and some potholes and things, and I'll say suspension is pretty nice overall. It's not bumpy. One thing you'll notice in Subaru Crosstrek, that compared to, let's say, Toyota RAV4 or Honda CR-V, it has like extra layer of cushion. Like you feel all these bumps, but they don't bother you. Like you have this extra cushion that does a nice job of damping and you know, kind of smoothing out all these bumps, and it's a nice feeling. Now the other part of it is done for off-roading, of course, that when you go over like a bigger bumps, you don't just jump in the car. It creates that kind of floating motion over the bumps, compared to some cars that not designed for off-roading. You'll be like, you know, moving around, it will not feel comfortable. So again, I'm revving the car, you hear a lot of revs, it goes to 5,000 RPM and not much is happening. Of course, car is moving, but like I said, I wish there was more power. You know, a lot of Subaru owners will be like, dude, it does the job. It certainly does. I'm just saying like what I wish it would have. Now, another reason I'm driving this car on the streets first, because I want to jump into some residential neighborhoods, is just to see like how easy to drive this car. You know, like when you're running your errands, you know, you're at the gas station, you have to do a lot of stop and go, you're making a lot of turning, like I'm doing right here. Like there's a lot of like on and off pavement, like movements, off balance, and then I'm stopping again, I'm turning. So how is it easy to drive this car in the streets? And after spending already more than 50 miles with the car, I can say that it's fairly easy to drive in the streets. Part of it is, of course, is the higher platform. It has a little bit more cushioned ride, which I already mentioned about suspension. Now let's talk about steering, right? The steering in this car is, compared to, let's say, Hondas and Toyotas, it's a little more sensitive. Like if I do left and right motion, it responds instantly, and this is something I'm going to talk about on the highway as well. But at the same time, this car has more excessive body lean, so it does more leaning, you know, left and right. It's not uncomfortable, but it's something to be aware of, and that's something I'm going to talk about more on the canyon roads, to see how safe this car is in dangerous situations. But overall, driving in the city is pleasant. It's pleasant. Steering, you know, stopping, braking. Now, another thing I want to bring it up, like if I stop this car, and what it does a lot, it has this extra leaning that when you brake, it tilts forward. When you go, like I'm going now, and then the hood goes up. So these things, when you're a little bit tired, may kind of get to you. Like if you're in the traffic, let's say you have to go constantly, you know, stop and go, then you'll be sitting in the car and, you know, unnecessary, just like going up and down a little bit. You'll get used to it, but it's one of those things that, let's say our Volkswagen CC, which is a sedan, of course, but many of the crossovers, they don't do this kind of, they do a little bit, but this car does it more. It does more of a tilting forward, and as you brake, it is more sensitive to brake. That's another thing I want to talk about. The gas pedal here is a little heavier when you press it, and when you press it, it kind of jumps at you. The car just jumps. That's the first thing you notice. Same with the brake. When you apply a small pressure, it wants to brake immediately. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. This is how this car has been engineered, and it's fine. It's just something to be aware of, and as you spend more time with the car, you'll know if this is a good or bad thing. You'll know if this makes you feel tired, you know, after spending hours in this car, or you're okay with it. So we are all different, we all wired differently, but to me personally, it's not something I personally like. I like the car to have more smoothness. I like more gradual responses rather than just jumping at you, and I like a little more body control than what this Subaru is. It's not a down thing, but I just wish it had a little bit more a better body control. So now let's drive it on the highway and see how it performs on the highway. All right, and now we're gonna drive this car on the highway. I'm merging a freeway here, do a quick acceleration to the stoplight. Okay. Like I said, it does feel underpowered, but it's certainly okay. It's something you can get used to and something you can live with. I personally suggest to go with a 2.5 liter Subaru. Now, I wouldn't pick this base engine, which is a 2 liter. I think it will be even more underpowered. All right, let's floor it. All right, no wheel spins. We have a symmetrical all-wheel drive system that does well. Of course, there's no high torque in here, so that's why, you know, there's probably not gonna be a wheel spin anyway. All right, let's see now. The next thing we do want to see is the sound insulation in this cabin. Like I already noticed in the city that the sound insulation in the cabin was okay, below average I would say, and you feel it more obviously driving on the highway. So I have a special meter that measures the, you know, the decibels, basically what the sound insulation. This is something I'm gonna put in a spreadsheet at the end of the video, and as I make these videos you can compare a lot of these cars and see which cars have better cabin insulation. So I'm gonna give it I'm gonna go at the little higher speed to about 65. There's a very light trickling rain, and then let's see what it is like. So I'm averaging about 65, so around 65. I guess it's okay, it's not bad, but I hear a lot of road noise coming, you know, from the sides. I hear a lot of road noise coming from the wheels as well. So the other thing I want to see in the highway driving is how comfortable it is to drive this car, right, on the long trips. And this is, again, not something you see in a lot of dealer test drive around the block. And that's exactly why I say you gotta rent this car for a day, spend time with it with your spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, and then you will get more data from this car. And this car belongs to highway. It has a very nice cushioned seats, which feel very comfortable actually. And this is the part I was most amazed with. And it's very easy to hold the car in a lane, so this car is perfect for long range driving. You just cruise and it goes. This car is for cruising. It has that floating motion that just nice, the floats, and then you just enjoy this, you know, drive, cruising drive. We have here a very light trickling rain. It hasn't rained in Southern California for so long, but now I decided to make my first video and it started raining, but it is what it is. Another thing I want to quickly point out before we hit up the canyon roads, how easy it is to overtake a car, right? So I'm going to overtake a couple of cars and see if it's easy enough. So now we're going to try to overtake this car in front of us from the right, and I'm revving. Yeah, it does a lot of high pitch revving. It has to go to like 5,000 RPMs in order to overtake, but it does it just fine. You know, it doesn't struggle at all. It does it just fine. So let's try to overtake safely, maybe, or just go a little faster in the left lane. I'm flooring it. There is a slight delay as it has to downshift, and then, so, you know, it's not, like I said, this car doesn't have a turbo, it doesn't have a lot of power, but it's decent. And personally, like when I drive cars like this, I like to put them in manual. This car has paddle shifters, so I will, you know, rev down. Let's say I need to overtake, I'll rev down, stay in higher, lower gears, and then I'll just floor it, and then you have more excessive power, and then you just shift with the, you know, yourself basically manually. And that's exactly how I like driving cars like these, which are underpowered, more than just having to do it automatically. So this is what I wanted to talk about in the highway driving, and like I said, this car is perfect for cruising. I enjoy just cruising this car. So now let's drive on the canyon roads. Alright, so this part of the test is on canyon roads, and it started raining a little bit, but you know what, it's better for us because we are in Subaru, so we should be ready for all kinds of conditions, including rainy roads. Alright, let's get started. So the acceleration is like okay, mediocre, but that's fine. Now, why I want to drive this car on canyon roads? Like, why would somebody drive a Subaru on canyon roads? So the first thing, driving car on the canyon roads is like listening to the orchestra, right? What does that mean? That means everything is put to the test. The engine, transmission, steering, brakes, everything works together. And I don't have to put the car in a sports mode to, like, you know, rev it and all that. Like, even if I drive you know, Porsche, for example, for me it's enough just to drive on canyon roads to see how this car actually would perform in dangerous situations. Like, let's say if somebody breaks in front of me and I'm driving Subaru, like, will I be able to like overtake that car, you know, and then still stay in the road, or I'm just gonna fly off? And plus, when you drive a car on the canyon road, not only it opens up and then you know what it's capable of, it also gives you the confidence. These are the roads where you build confidence, these twisty roads. And I already spent some time driving it on canyon roads, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting that despite this car having, like I said, this extra cushion where it smoothens out a lot of bumps, despite it having these little bit more leaning kind of body, but it does really well on canyon roads. And the first thing it tells me that, hey, you know, you can drive me fast, you can drive me on twisty roads, you can be in dangerous situations and I'll be just fine. So actually here I don't see any, like, you know, wobbliness. I don't see any excessive leaning that would make me feel like, oh, whoa, you know, you shouldn't do this thing, especially in the crossover with the higher platform. So the, you know, engine is fine, it gets you going, that's no problem. Transmission is just revving, you know, as it is, as CVT's transmission should rev. The brakes feel okay. They're not BMW, Porsche kind of brakes, but they do the job just fine. I don't know what this car is doing in the middle here. Weird. They do just fine. The thing that I'm impressed the most with is suspension. And suspension is actually the number one thing, is what, you know, gives you that premium feel, or basically opens up a character of any car. And when you take it on a twisty road, that's where you can test the suspension, see how it does. Especially, let's say, if I'm turning, if I'm on a twisty roads, hitting all those little, you know, imperfections on the road, and I just want to see how the chassis perform. I want to see if the chassis is stable. Does it move just up and down, or does it do like this kind of shaky moves like some of the earlier Honda and Nissan products did, which was a shame, but they don't do that anymore. So this car does all the right moves. You know, when they say, hey, this guy does all the right moves. So the Subaru Crosstrek, in fact, this is my first real experience with the Subarus, despite, you know, having a friend drive me in you know, the Imprezas, which are very firm cars but also very stable. But this is my first experience driving a Crosstrek crossover, and I'm impressed. I'm impressed that this car is capable. It's capable for whatever you throw at. You know, the bad weather conditions. You know, you just want to have a little bit of fun on the back roads. It is not a BMW, it's not a Porsche, and it doesn't have to be. But it does all the right moves. It's able to carry its body. You know, the engine has to rev a little more. Transmission does a little bit whining, but you're still having fun. You know, you're still having fun. Don't try to take this car to any limits. I would not recommend that. Okay, don't try to like drive it faster than you should be. Okay, that's not what this car for. I can easily hit the limit of the Subaru, and since it's all-wheel drive, we don't want that. We don't want to try to slide it. We don't want to create any dangerous situations. But even if you drive it a little bit faster than normal, this car will do just fine. And here on the wet roads, after a little bit of raining, it's great. You know, it's capable. It's capable. Alright, I hope you like this. I hope you find value in this. And this is my first video. Hope to make more videos, you know, bringing more cars on the channel and talk more about them. And now let's see if I can do another video of something I was not planning on, but something that Subaru is also capable of. Alright, this part of the video I was not planning to shoot because that's not what I usually do on the channel, but you know, it's the first video and we're gonna do some different things. So I decided, since it rains and you know, since I have a Subaru which is all-wheel drive, I found some, which pretty much I know, back roads here where I can kind of take it a little bit off-road. So that's right here where the pavement ends, and I just kind of want to see how suspension feels on a Subaru driving in, you know, off-road conditions. And here's what I want to bring up actually real quick, is that, remember I mentioned that this car has extra cushion. So what it helps in off-roading is that I feel more or less comfortable in this car, so I don't kind of like jump around. I don't like when you drive a regular car off-road. I don't know if you guys drove the car off-road, you can relate to it, but you just do a lot of up and down because your shocks just go up and down. They are not really designed for the stress. So the cars, you know, for off-road have different kind of shocks, and while Subaru is not a hardcore off-roader, that extra cushioning that it has, it does help it to, you know, elevate some stress, some pressure that you know, from the shocks, and respond differently to off-roading. So I'm kind of driving in, you know, where most likely, you know, if you only live in these areas, you should be coming here, and this is usually kind of close to public, but I just want to kind of see how it does. And it does great, you know, it does fairly fine. All right, so that's what I wanted to shoot. I got some low tire pressure, I don't know why. I'm gonna go check it out before I get stuck here. All right guys, now that I completed driving this car on all different terrains and I kind of talked about it, now it's the time to give it a final thought and give it a feel score. And look, I'm in this beautiful, there's a little fog here. It looks so beautiful outside. I'm in the Mulholland Drive. There's a light drizzle, and this is the time to give a final score to the Subaru Crosstrek. So what do I think? Well, first, I recorded this as a quick video when I just got the car and drove it for 1 mile. Let's say I'm at a dealership, I'm test driving this car, and my first impression is driving for just 1 mile. I don't like it. It's firm, it looks clunky, the interior is like rattling. I really don't like it. So, you know, for someone who has certain expectations of, let's say, Subaru, they go test drive it around the block, that's what dealers mostly offer. Like, I would personally not buy this car, which kind of proves the point after driving this car close to 100 miles now, where I can say that after spending some time with the car, I kind of changed my mind. I changed my mind on many things, and I can say that this car is capable. It's not the car I personally would buy because I would love to have more power and a different kind of transmission where I feel, you know, those shifts. I feel more power with the transmission and maybe a little bit sportier steering. But this car does exactly what it's built for, and that is, you know, giving comfort on the daily, you know, drives. You know, if you go to work, home, you know, you go to long trips, it's perfect for long trips. It does it really well. And of course, driving off-road in, you know, bad weather conditions, this car will do perfectly fine on snow, uphill. You know, here in California, when we go to like Big Bear or Lake Tahoe, this car will do perfectly fine. It's not a performer necessarily, but it's certainly a good, well-rounded car, and it's perfect for, you know, young families, teenagers. Just don't drive this car aggressively. This is not a Mazda, okay? This is not a BMW, of course. Don't drive it aggressively. You can drive it fast, just be careful with it. And after spending time, after getting all the feedback, my final feel score for this car is 5 out of 10, and I'll put some spreadsheet data why that is. All right, I hope you enjoyed this review. Make sure you put some comments down below if you want me to review any other Subaru products. If you want me to, oh, that's a Lamborghini Urus there. Want me to talk about more about Subaru, and I know there are a lot of loyal Subaru fans. You know, you can leave your comments if you have any questions. If you're considering to buy a Crosstrek, and you have any questions that I didn't talk about driving, let me know so I can answer them for you. And it's time for me to leave, and I'll see you in the next video.